This conference will now be recorded.
Second.
Hamel second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor. Bullseye.
Aye.
Hooker.
Aye.
Wiener.
Aye.
Hamel.
Aye.
Brendan.
Is that me? Aye. I couldn't quite hear.
Yeah, yep, okay. Steger.
Aye.
And Rocky, aye. Motion carries. I could take my mask off. Let's see. Public hearings, we've got 4A St. Paul Road. Any comments that you'd like to make, staff?
Let me grab it. This guy.
Press it in for a few seconds, right?
What we want to do with this one is send approval of the preliminary and final plats of the St. Paul Road project. And to refresh your memory, I have the attachments. It's going to be under old business A of what that project was. It was 2 lots subdivided into 4 lots for townhome purposes. And it sounds like this has been on the docket for the past meeting, and we'd like to get it to be approved and sent towards council.
Well, it's pretty, well, I can open the public. Let's see, is this a public hearing? Yes, it is. I can open the public hearing now. Does anybody have any questions regarding the proposed plat that we're talking about here? Is there a name for the plat yet?
Mike Zilgett here with Zilgett Civil Design, engineering consultant. Can you guys hear me fine?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Name of the plat is St. Paul Road Townhomes. And then just letting you know I'm here for any questions if you guys have any.
I had one question. I was curious on the lower left of the diagram. Looks like an easement or something through there. What is that about?
Yeah, there's a sewer force main and then a water main that run through there. Basically connecting to the sewer and water that's out in St. Paul Road there.
Sure. And that won't impinge on the construction.
Nope, no, townhomes will be able to stay clear of that, and they'll remain 10 feet plus from the actual sewer and water main themselves.
Good.
So we're good on setbacks. We didn't need to do any PUD for relaxed setbacks or anything like that, as far as we know, Brian. Any other comments on the plat? Well, I'll close the public hearing, and then are we addressing that further down, or?
This is more of a formality. I didn't know how to format, putting the first agenda together. I just moved old business and new business to old.
Very next item would be the approval. After
All right, let's move on to number 5A then. So once in a while with very simple plats, we can combine both the preliminary and the final plat as opposed to a larger subdivision, which is a 2-step process. So I guess the motion would be in order to recommend approval to City Council.
This is Venus. I would make that motion that we approve it.
Second, it's Steger.
All right, good motion. Second, any other discussion? Otherwise, all in favor to recommend to council approval of both the preliminary and final plat. Holzai.
Aye.
Hooker.
Aye.
Venus.
Aye.
Hamel. Aye. Prince.
Aye.
Steger.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. What is that noise? All right, we'll move on to 6A. We've got a vacation request at 169 9th Street East. Dylan, any info on that you'd like to give?
Yeah, so this one, it's a future owner that has yet to obtain the deed from family and friends of the property under question, and the attachment shows where this is, right off 10th, or by 10th Street. In the attachments, new business A, there was conceptual drawings submitted to city staff proposing potential vacation request. I first and foremost have questions on the process of vacation, whether it starts with an application and when was the last time we saw one. If that could be cleared up first, so then I could recommend what steps could be. But long story short, he wants the best use of the land. He has some landlocked property back there and is wanting to get city's input on potential if vacation is possible.
It's a process in front of city council. I suppose the planning, as part of a planning process, the planning commission could make a recommendation, but usually it's a council thing.
Okay.
There's some provision in our code on it, but otherwise it's governed by Minnesota statutes, so we can look at that but it does have to be initiated by, I can't remember if it's just a single property owner or a majority of them.
Yeah.
And then there needs to be notice given and probably a public hearing if I remember right, but we can look at that, yeah.
So this in the next couple line items of new business are more so me becoming familiar if they should even be on type of deal.
Sure.
But, if somebody's submitting me conceptual drawings, I thought I'd bring that before so we could make me aware of what I should tell potential people requesting vacation requests.
My biggest question on this one is, I don't know if staff or public works has an opinion whether this street should just be opened, and create a public street, or is it too short of a street where the street department wouldn't necessarily want to see that as an open street, and we'd want to think about more of a private street or an easement with where the city doesn't maintain any of it or improve it. That's question number one.
I did have a conversation just a little bit ago, our city engineer on this. I guess as of right now, opinion would be that, well, I don't know why the road would have to go through there. We can entertain a vacation of that. Some of the considerations would be if we do vacate, half of that would go to the two owners, the 169 9th Street and the 269 9th Street. So half of each would go each direction in a vacation. We don't know about utilities or anything underneath there, so there would have to be an easement if there are any utilities under there. Gonna need to be surveyed for sure. And at this point, we're thinking the driveway off of 9th Street would be best. The property owner is here, or the future property owner is here if you wanted some insight to what he's thinking.
Well, I was curious, those highlighted areas, what's the significance of those?
Proposals of what would be acceptable from the future property owner.
Was it going to be one lot, Brian? Yeah, so he's proposing combining all that into one lot, two different proposals, one coming off of 9th and one coming off the end of 10th. We haven't done a full city review on this. He came in to talk to us. We thought, well, let's bring it to planning and zoning just to get some thoughts and direction. So, the vacation direction, that's great. We can bring that back to look at the statutes for that part of it. And then, I guess that's probably the first step, because that's going to dictate what he does from there as far as, getting a civil engineer involved to do some a survey and kind of figure things out from there.
How's the city dealing with that westerly portion of 10th right now?
how are we dealing with it as far as it being a gravel, not paved?
Right. Well,
We're not as of yet. It's something that should be dealt with at some point. That conversation came up with the city engineer as well. But
if there needs to, well, if the easterly portion that Brian's interested in is vacated and converted to, well, I guess, yeah,
I think what I would like from this conversation is direction on what to do and what to recommend people with coming with vacation requests.
but I was thinking maybe we should expand it a little bit and whether, whichever way we go, if it happens, whether it's a 9th Street access or a 10th Street access, should we encourage the other owners on 10th Street to reach some, I don't know if there's some sort of maintenance agreement between those owners now or what, or if, should that stay an open street but unimproved, or how we should deal with that as well.
So you suggest?
I have talked to all the property owners there,
Huh?
and they are in favor of vacating that strip. I didn't get signatures yet, but I have talked to everybody on it.
So they'd want to vacate the whole works then,
Well, they don't want the road coming through either, I guess.
right?
I mean, I guess
And as
my,
far as the city right now, they just push the snow up to the end of the road. There's enough vacancy there that they just push the snow there and it melts off and runs away in the spring.
Yeah, that's a concern that came to my mind is how does the city maintain a dead end street like that?
That's why I suggested coming off at 9th, because really for the city, nothing would have to change, I mean, they could keep doing business the way they always have been.
So if you went with Plan A, there'd be possibly just vacating that easterly portion of the street, and then you and the owner to the north would think about splitting up the vacated street on a diagonal rather than right down the center line, right?
He just wanted a proposal from me.
Sure.
So he gave me them pieces of paper.
Yep.
And that's just, I figured it was a starting point. I just was wondering what the city was thinking, I guess.
And then you'd have to deal with the owner of, is that Quast there?
269
No, former Quast, who's there now?
Yeah, I don't know who it is now.
of 269?
Yeah.
It wasn't Kitzman there.
Oh, is that, okay,
That's
maybe
the
I'm
last person that
wrong.
was there. And they sold a couple years ago, and I'm not sure, I can't remember his name.
Probably to get all these people on board, because they're, they'd be entitled to
Yeah,
the south half of that.
these two lots on the bottom here, the whatever would be ones to the, I don't know, them are vacant lots right now. There's nothing on those lots.
Yep, PIDs ending in 010, 020, and 030 are vacant currently. Yep.
And who owns that lots now?
my family.
Your family owns them 3 lots there? Okay.
We own 169 and then them.
Yep.
So my family is the one that developed all that property.
Okay.
So 10th Street is never, there used to be a barn where 10th Street stops. It's never come through there.
So what's the plans to do with this? Either way,
I
to
want to build a house back there.
back on this,
Two and a partial. I want to combine them all into one lot and I want to build a house back there.
coming off 9th Street or coming up 10th Street?
I would like to come off 9th Street.
Okay.
I mean, I would come off 10th Street, but
He just wants to use the land that's being unused.
right. Without the road, just for the simple fact that my grandma never wanted that road. That was the only reason.
So right now, the city owns, if you take this 10th Street and go up to 9th Street where it's lined, the city owns that lot.
Right
So
away.
basically, we want to vacate that, give that to Brian and divide it up to whatever, what it wants to be.
Yeah, I mean, being unfamiliar with the process, I do think step number one would be like what Matt said, we'd have to get input from the properties, the budding properties. As far as this goes, though, I don't know how familiar the city is with vacation requests or how common they are to approve. From my office's position, it would be increasing the tax base, so I don't mind it. And then especially if the surrounding properties don't want it there.
Your mom or one of your family still lives in 169?
My uncle lives
Yeah,
there.
so, okay.
Matt, I mean, he knows a little bit about what's going on. I mean, his family done all the lawyering for that. What went on there, yeah.
Sure. Well, it was been before
I think
mine.
we have to get the city,
And your uncle.
Sure. Yeah, I
I
guess
think
the
we have
other,
to see what utilities are and such too, for sure.
yeah,
So-
for sure.
so Utilities, I know, come up 10th Street there. I mean, I know there's sewer and water that come up to there. And as far as utilities, I would think that they would have to go down through 10th Street, just for the simple fact that 9th Street's so high. I don't know how I get sewer back to 9th Street, because the land is so much lower than 9th Street.
Right. That was the other thing I was thinking of is runoff from coming down 9th Street. If you had a driveway off 9th, you might be taking a lot of water down through your driveway.
Well, I'd rather come up 10th, but I didn't know how the city would handle the snow removal and stuff there, I guess. I mean, what would you do with the snow then? You know, right now you push it up and it's a done deal. It's easy for you. You back down, you make 2 slots up and
Well, what would have to happen, you know, if you were to develop that back area, a city street can't end like that technically. It would have to be a cul-de-sac.
Right.
So probably you're going to be coming off 9th Street if this moves forward.
Because of the cul-de-sac issue and the snow plowing issue.
Right.
Otherwise, he's going to get it at the end of his driveway because there's no way to turn around. Like I live on a cul-de-sac, they just,
We can enter the rest of 10th Street into the conversation as Matt suggested too.
Yeah.
We move along here.
so let's just, if the hookups, is the property owner going to have to pay for the hookups? Either to come up 10th Street to pay that extra, I mean, if they're, let's just say they stop on 10th Street at the 721 and he's got to run that hookup another 100 feet. Him as the property owner to build in the house would have to pay for them hookups or to come down 10th Street because we don't know where them hookups are. Or even if they're up in the middle of 9th Street, they would have to dig up half of 9th Street and hook up there for sewer and water. I mean, is that it's not a city's responsibility, is it? That would be the developer to put that.
Yeah, typically the city would bring sewer and water to the right of way, but when you get into tearing up a road and stuff like that, then yeah, it's the developer that would do that. But I would think if it's all the way up to the end of 10th Street, that's where they would come from. And we don't know yet. This is pretty preliminary. This was kind of more informational and getting thoughts from the planning and zoning. And then we'll work with Brian as we go here. The first thing we need to do is visit the vacation. Vacation sounds pretty good.
And you had mentioned a cul-de-sac on 10th Street. I mean, there probably should be a cul-de-sac there anyway, even if he doesn't do this, if we dead end it.
I mean, I think if nothing else, it should just be a through street. I mean, I wouldn't even spend the putting the cul-de-sac in because you're going to take land from the other property owners to put that cul-de-sac in.
the only property that you're gonna be taking from is me.
And you don't want that, do you?
Well, I just, not.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm the property owner on both sides of that 10th Street there. See, 10th Street ends at our property line.
Yeah. And that's where they just put, I mean, here's my philosophy. I mean, the way I look at it, if we haven't put a through street now, why would we put a through street today or tomorrow?
Right.
Where it comes out is pretty close to Perry Court too, so.
We were just afraid, I didn't mean to step. I was just afraid that it'll end up like a little racetrack. I mean, they'll come off court and sit down through there. it's such a short street, you know what I mean?
I mean, and I get it. I mean, and I don't want to step on Matt's because he knows this a lot more, but we haven't done it now. Why would we do it tomorrow? I mean, and it's, but I mean, monetary issues or reasons, if we vacate, do they have to pay for that chunk of land that the city's given and we just vacate it and that's how, I mean,
So that was my question. So when this was developed, we just gave you the land? Is that how that works?
I think that's part of the, yeah.
The plating.
It's for the rights of the public to travel across, that's all it is.
Okay.
And we can't
Yeah,
sell.
because
But we can't sell it because we're, yeah, okay, I get it. I mean,
I was just saying, the city has no skin in there as of right now, you know what I mean? They didn't have to buy anything or anything.
Well, the city has to determine, I believe, is whether it's in the public's best
Yeah,
interest to
right.
vacate this. If there's no anticipated need in the future for this street, vacate it, probably think about reserving an easement for public utilities. Otherwise, if that's not necessary, if it's just going to be a private driveway, you'd have to cross that bridge too. But I would think the vacation should be contingent on an agreement between at least the neighbors to the immediate north and south that how you're going to divvy up that street rather than just vacate it and let you guys duke it out.
So 269 is basically who I would have to talk to, because that'd be the only one.
Both to the north and the south, right?
I don't know that.
Nine as well.
269 or the 269 is the only one you got to figure out.
That would be the only thing is if they were to get half of that, right?
Yeah.
But for a driveway, probably.
I still have, well, in there too, being that I own, I mean, I would make it an easement there then, I guess you would say, or a right of, what, how would you, I would allow the driveway to be there?
No,
Easement unless you're crossing somebody else's property. Otherwise, if it's all owned by you,
Yeah,
it's
Yeah,
just a
right.
goofy shaped lot.
yeah. Well, that's why on proposal A or whatever, I thought you could just kitty corner, you know, and split it right down, I'd have it re-surveyed and split it right, you know, go from one to the other side. To give it access off of 9th Street there.
Some of the problems that would still need to be figured out as well are the lot size of what would be platted, combining those three lots, to check setbacks for the type of development of house that you want there. And then also the new information of the cul-de-sac. Would the cul-de-sac go on his property? Can you,
anticipate if he's not coming off of 10th Street, I wouldn't anticipate we would retroactively put in a cul-de-sac unless there was some reason to. I think.
I am questioning if there would even be room for a cul-de-sac in there.
that was my thought as well. And how would that come apart if it was needed or required? I don't know.
What is our engineer is the best scenario on that? Coming up 10th Street for his driveway or 9th Street?
We were just,
He just saw it 10 minutes ago or before the meeting and his first reaction was, well, yeah, 9th Street. And then to Matt's point, the bigger discussion about what are we going to do with 10th Street, the rest of 10th Street. You know, something should be done with that portion at some point. So, you know, that can enter into the whole discussion as well.
Is it even possible to vacate the rest of 10th Street from East Street and just give it to the property owners that are existing and let them, their responsibility to take care of it and shovel it and plow it? I mean, is that normal to do that?
Short street, yeah, you'd still want to reserve public utilities for any utilities.
Yeah, these are all discussions that'll have to take place. But at least planning and zoning is aware of the request that it's out there.
I'm assuming council would have a problem with a fairly large lot there. I know in the past, well, in a newer subdivision anyway, property owners wanted to split a lot in half, so they had a larger buffer. They created a larger lot and council denied it. But probably in this unique situation, I can't imagine council would say, oh, well, we could probably fit 2 homes in there somewhere.
Your ultimate goal is to build one house for yourself or for a family, combining whatever happens, the multiple lots and making a one home. And I mean, I'm okay with that. I mean, and I guess the only way I would look at it, I would talk to our city engineer and see what they recommend if they go up 9th Street or 10th Street, the easements. I mean, to me, all this makes sense because 10th Street has kind of been a blah. Obviously, whatever we decide to do, we also got to bring up the snow and the maintenance issue at some point, because if he comes up 9th Street, we need somewhere to put up our snow for them 3-4 residents up on 10th Street, so.
I would recommend that we table this until we can have a discussion with the city engineer and see what he would recommend.
Well, I don't know if we need to table it. I just think we need to give him direction saying that, hey, here's where we're at. Let's talk to our city engineer. Let's go forward and see what the best recommendations are on that.
I think we're generally all okay with the idea. It's just the details all have to be figured out.
And I agree with Tom on that.
We'll just keep it on the agenda.
I mean, and Brian's got direction and knowing, let's talk to our engineer and go from there. And obviously, I think he needs to talk to his other property owners deciding, I guess the only one is 269 of however they want to do that. And they might be say, okay, whatever.
Well, I guess it would be all here. Or are you just gonna make it that half like I wish for it to be?
To talk to the other owners.
Talk to all of them?
Right, get it all figured out at once.
Wouldn't see why not either, yeah.
But I mean, I think the bottom line is what our engineers thinking is the best way to go. And then whatever the best way to go is, then we need to hear.
And can we wait and address this at the next meeting when we get more information?
Yeah, keep it on the agenda.
We'll just keep bringing up as we have them.
Anything else on that one? Might as well move on to 6B, Airbnbs.
All right, so these next 2 are going to be a lot quicker. Over the past week or 2, I've received a couple of inquiries into cities' ordinances on various topics, including Airbnbs and drones. And I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself by talking about both at once, but I looked into it. We don't have any ordinances for Airbnbs. We don't have any rental ordinances, for example. Airbnbs is a relatively new phenomenon, and only 2 cities in the state have rental license requirements, but one being Rochester, the other St. Paul. This is something that I did not know, and as you all know, I'm new to this position, so I'm wondering what happens in this process. So that's why I wanted to bring it forth. Do I bring you guys this stuff? Do you like hearing this stuff? Is this boring? You know, I don't know.
Well, we've talked about fences for about 3 months, so.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me, I'm kicking the can down the road one more month till for tax season get over, and then I'll take a closer look at the front yard fence issue. Anyway. But Airbnbs, yeah, our ordinance could possibly address, I know we've dealt with, I don't know, short-term transient housing, whatever you want to call it, hotels like in the downtown area. So our ordinance might indirectly address it, but whether we want to look into it further and look at updating or a new ordinance dealing with specifically Airbnbs, we could kick it around.
I mean, it's potential revenue, but at the same time, I don't know if I like it, if you're asking me personally.
I mean, my opinion is I think we should have rental guidelines before we do Airbnb or guidelines.
I agree with that, because I couldn't even find anything in the ordinances on a bunch of rental details.
I mean, I had rental properties in Rochester, and dealing with Rochester's rental guidelines were ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
They really were, and I don't want to go that avenue because that's a whole nother department and regulating. But I mean, if we're going to regulate Airbnbs, I think we need to regulate rentals before we do Airbnbs.
I'm not a big fan of licensing, like Red Wing deals with it.
No, and
They have
I agree.
inspection. It's just a burden on staff.
I just think if we start getting an issue on rentals, because I think some guidelines are good just to protect the renter, but it can go overboard quickly. I mean, I don't see it a problem, so I don't know if it's something we want to address until we see it's a problem. It's the same thing with Airbnb. I mean, how's the city going to regulate if somebody's using it for an Airbnb? Because they don't, I mean, other than advertising, obviously, I guess would be a good way, but.
This one was brought forth to me. Let me pull up the memorandum. I had a real estate agent reach out because they had a client interested in property in town, but they wanted to use it as Airbnb. And then I've yet to respond to him because we have no answer. I mean, I can make it up. For now.
And there's nothing stopping you from renting out your house, but an Airbnb seems more like a business than just a rental. It's a fine line.
But a rental is a business though, too.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a rental in town. I mean, you're generating income. I mean, at least a rental, I'm generating monthly income on Airbnb. It's, you're not renting it out.
I don't know, I think there's a slight difference, but it's gray, it's overlap.
I don't know. I guess my opinion is
Airbnb is more like a hotel.
100% agree.
It also depends on how much you're, allowing it to be an Airbnb. Some people live in them 3/4 of the month and then only do it,
Yeah.
But, yeah. I guess, being new here, if I get calls and I don't have an answer, this one seems like something that we could talk about, but I agree with the sentiment that if we start getting more and more of these, then it should be brought up.
I mean, I guess the answer to that guy's question, we have no guide. I mean.
Yep.
And just let it be. I mean, until it becomes an issue.
Oh, yeah, it could become an issue if we have entrepreneurs coming in and buying up our housing stock for use for Airbnbs.
Yeah.
You know,
Think
but
anybody want to have an Airbnb in Zumbrota?
I could look it up, see how many there are.
But if you get somebody staying in Minnesota or in the Mayo Clinic for 2 months for treatment, it's going to be cheaper to rent an Airbnb in Zumbrota than it is Rochester, because I have a cousin that has an Airbnb in Rochester, and what she gets, it's ridiculous, but she's full.
I don't think it's something we need to deal with at this point.
Yeah.
I think Rochester finally just did. I don't even know if they put that into, because they argued about that for 2 years. I don't know if they finally did or not, but anyway.
I guess I would just, if it becomes an issue, it becomes an issue.
So, yeah, I believe Rochester have a local sales tax on short-term lodging is what they recently decided, which Airbnbs fall under.
Okay.
Which is the hotel.
Well, I don't mind taking a look into things, but we can just let it sit for now. Anything else on that issue from anybody? Otherwise, 6C drones.
A little different. I guess a resident has a drone here that flies it around. And we had a concerned resident asking or inquiring into if we have any ordinances relating to recreational drone usage. What I could find out through research is that not many cities have it at all for recreational use, because you have to get a license if you use it as more than a hobby.
I think it's regulated by FDA too.
FAA.
Or FAA, sorry.
FAA, which FAA, I provided a link, I don't know, in the memorandum at least, to the FAA guidelines.
I think it's the same thing. I mean, if it's.
I guess, so to recap these last two, you guys know me as the new zoning administrator here. I don't want to be telling people answers that I do not know or we do not have, is the reason why these two guys are on line items. So that's kind of why I brought it up. Plus, I like hearing you guys talk to get to know you.
So I didn't read your link on the regs, but how much of that deals with invasion of privacy?
So that's generally it. You can fly it like you can fly a kite. You can go to the park and fly a drone recreationally, but you don't fly it between your neighbors' houses and on above people's houses and things of that nature. So it's pretty self-explanatory in that sense, but
But here's a question that you might be able to answer being in real estate. Now, drones and pictures of houses via drone has become more popular. To get a tour of a house via drone, the backyard, what you just told me is not illegal. I mean, it's not.
no, I mean, you're getting consent from the property owner. But yeah, if you're going over property lines to get the better angles, I'm sure what they do is go door to door and ask. You know what I mean? Hey, we're gonna be flying a drone around for X amount of time.
They
Take
don't.
pictures of a new listing. But so when the resident brought this.
Should ask, right?
Yeah, well, they should. I mean, half the people don't even probably see the drones, but this resident who inquired was concerned that pictures were being taken of her.
I can see that.
Yeah,
Maybe that's addressed in the FAA regs. I don't know, legitimate commercial use for real estate.
maybe.
Yeah, it's not the commercial use, it's the problem, it's the individuals. I mean, pretty much if you keep it in line of sight, you can fly anywhere as far as I know.
Well, I mean, there are such things as air rights and personal property. I believe it's, do you know this? Is it 700 feet above your property or is it 7 miles? It's something with a 7. I remember that from real estate school, but that was almost a decade ago.
Mhm.
You're not supposed to fly things above people's properties unless you live near an airport, then they get their rights rescinded.
So maybe somebody take a look at that link and see if it covers enough of our bases, and if there's a violation, would local law enforcement get involved, or would it have to go through some other channels?
I would think law enforcement for that one. Aren't they code enforced for us already, right? Pat or somebody?
I think it's worth looking into.
Yeah.
Other cities have any drone regulations that you've seen or looked at?
Yeah, I mean, these last two guys, I just Googled a bunch and was doing some research, but not many people have. Airbnbs are a little bit older than recreational drone usage, So the only thing most cities have adopted are the FAA guidelines.
High school or the school has got a policy that you can't fly over their buildings or fields.
I think crashes a drone into someone's house, then it's,
I mean, at some point, I'm sure there's non-drone specific regulations that somebody could just file a harassment claim, right? Complaint, but that'd be a different deal. All right, well,
I just looked up on the internet, do drone operators need a license? If you intend to fly your drone for or at work commercially, there are extra rules you need to follow. You will need a remote pilot license or fly in the excluded category. That's what it says.
Yep, and that's to fly it for work or commercially, not recreationally. You can have a
Right, it says work or commercial, yeah.
license.
And if you look at your
And then
link,
the
it
next
doesn't say
part-
anything about- yeah, airspace there.
The next part says, in this context, only a drone pilot who flies for fun or recreational is allowed to fly a drone without a license. All commercial drone flight falls under the jurisdiction of the FAA's small UAS rule.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And again, with Ryan was here before I was, had a handle on all this, what he brings to planning and zoning. And so Dylan's been asking me and I don't even know. So if you see some goofy stuff on here, between the two of us, we'll learn as we go. So you guys got to tell us if there's things on the agenda that shouldn't be there
No,
or
this
you
is
wouldn't
good.
consider. Then
The other thing is, when I send out the packet the week prior, if you guys want to make any recommendations or amendments, feel free to shoot me back an email or reply to it, because I can add or subtract, cater to the committee's wishes.
should we move on to number 7 then? What do we have for 7A?
This is just more of an update. In the past 2 weeks ago or so, Brian, would you say? We met with the city's building official, and certain permit obligations have begun being transferred to their office. And this was done just to alleviate some of the time requirements of city hall staff here. Right now, especially it's building season, so we get permits almost every day. And they take care of permit obligations, for example, for a lot of the other communities that they serve, but they have not for a long while for Zumbrota. So that's just more of an update here for this committee. The only other thing I could probably add is we're in a transition period, and some of the feedback I've received from the building official is it's hard to approve permits without ordinances language that they're used to, and or they recommend sometimes that we're missing ordinances. So I believe over the next couple of weeks, I might be presenting some more concrete recommendations to additional ordinance language for, the most recent one was questions about decks and encroachments involving those that they cannot find in our ordinances. And I couldn't find either when we looked together. But I think that would, be for the benefit. But that's the only update there.
Yeah, really what we're gonna do is building permit issuance and all that stuff will go to Tom Thompson, Roger, and Casey. We're gonna ask them to we're gonna receive permit. They're gonna put numbers on it. They're gonna do the review, zoning and building permit reviews. Of course, Dylan will still be responsible for bringing things to the Planning and Zoning Commission as they come up. And just like he said, some of the ordinances, they're already identifying, well, this is a little bit ambiguous, or this is not in there. And so it's kind of a good check on that as well. So over the next number of planning and zoning meetings, we probably will be bringing some ordinance changes, additions, things like that, just to make things more uniform. So.
Anything under 7B, C, and D? Are there updates that you want to give us?
Yeah,
No, or-
these can be just quick, but D, we have a little bit more to talk about. But B and C, I noticed that these were on last month's meeting agenda. The only update for B is the developer has been in contact with the city quite a bit, not as much this week so far, about future roads and zoning definitions and inquiries relating to how his recycling center should be laid out on the property, which if we're familiar with our future plans and where the roads are going to go at this address, it looks like his recycling center might have to face to the west, but he wants confirmation on that. But the other thing about future plans is we don't know when those roads are going in. So I don't know if anybody, we don't even, if you have something to say now, otherwise you can email me, and he's pretty satisfied as of now. He's going to put a recycling center there. The other thing is, and Brian, you may be able to touch on this, isn't there going to be an overpass? What road is that up there?
Yeah, there's gonna be an overpass eventually.
By Covered Bridge Restaurant?
Going across 52. Yep. So that'll change things. We'll take all that into account as he does his plating. So.
Yeah.
That might be 20 years.
Yeah.
Years out.
Yep.
Moving on to C. So the buyer side representatives, and I'm guessing, so the dollar store's only been around for a couple months now, hasn't it? So the buyer side representatives have been in contact with us quite a bit and their attorney about obtaining copies of their development application, and they keep needing explanation to the meaning behind interim use permit. And so one thing I wanted to ask you is clarity on that. What my interpretation of the ordinance is interim use doesn't go with the property or the applicant. It goes specifically with the use, which could fall to both. And so that's what the use itself.
Yeah.
Because I saw in the minutes that the use was put in place as long as X amount of percentage remained retail. So what they were wondering, if they sold one day, would that IUP still be there? And under the definition of the language, yes, as long as it's 70% retail, it can be if you want it to be.
We have to check that. Usually IUPs, if I remember right, and change of ownership unless it's drafted in that. If the permit's drafted in a way where it's just contingent on the other percentage, then then I suppose there's an argument that it would, but I would think they'd want to come back to the commission to make sure that,
So who was asking the question? The owner of that property?
Well, the owner's commercial real estate representative, his name is Jay Christensen. And then after me and Jay had dialogue, I can't remember the attorney's name, but he asked for clarification on the IUP, to which I gave them both copies of the ordinances and spoke with them about interpreting them, because they are,
interim use permits, kind of a workaround when you can't issue a conditional use permit or a variance, and it's kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, and it's kind of a way to allow something where it's otherwise not allowed for a period of time. You know, we didn't put a sunset on it, but I would think that we'd want to take the position if there's change of ownership, we'd want to review it and make sure that the new owner is aware of the way it's going to work.
yeah.
Mhm.
But we just passed it, so we could do that as long as Family Dollar's in there.
Yep.
And the majority of that space stays retail. And I think that would change, I mean, that would go with the new owners if it got sold monthly.
I don't know.
You're exactly right, Matt, in that the only sunset on it was the only restriction on it was that 70% had to stay retail. That's one. And then change of ownership, I would think you're right in that we would review it for sure. I wouldn't just go with that property.
But we want to be careful to be consistent.
Yeah.
Not arbitrarily say, no, we don't want to do that anymore.
Right, yeah.
I don't foresee them selling anytime soon, though. They just moved in January, we're saying.
No, Family Dollar moved in, but it's still owned by Cheney.
Oh.
Yeah,
And I think Jay Christensen has a buyer for that building under the assumption that they get the retail and they get that storage unit.
Right.
I think that's why Jay was here, that one planning and zoning and council, is because he's representing a possible buyer for that property from Steve Cheney.
Hmm.
And I know an interim use permit does not go along with the property if it's sold.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. So we probably at least need to review it and issue another one to the new owner. As long as we're being consistent, there's probably not a problem with that, but it's just nothing that gets recorded and runs with the land.
Makes sense.
All right, how about G then?
So this one, and we have the owner here in attendance, we received a development application for a potential rezone. So this property, if we have our attachments here, has been in question as far as what I've seen over the past couple months here at these meetings. And the long story short, to recap, is Brenda Lumen would like to potentially sell the property to Lane Booker. Is that correct, for potential commercial storage on this site? The only hesitation is, number one, rezoning would be needed, and number two, it falls in line with the city's future plan usage, and there should be a road that's going to go through this property.
Correct.
So one of the things she's here to find out is just some clarity on what our options are. Would you like to speak a little bit on?
Right, so, yeah, we've come to the board a few times to get some clarity. One of the problems that we have is that the city plan for that street, it's not real concrete. It's not anything that's being planned. It's just kind of an idea yet. And, well, we're concerned that from people that we've talked to, I guess, talking to the engineer, talking to different people about this, that this street would be a long ways away from now. So we're not sure how much we should really let that influence the plans, or, and then we don't know exactly where it would be. So even if we tried to, not build where the street would be, we don't know where the exact spot is, or if there's any flexibility in where that would lie on this property. But also that we really can't continue to go forward with this project unless we can at least rezone it. I mean, I can't expect somebody to buy the property if it's not even going to pass the zoning. So I want to know that we can at least get through this first step, and has to have the right zone to even, for me to even sell it. And so some other points that I had, trying to get more information. I did talk to Mike Zilgit. He looked at the property. He mentioned that, you know, it doesn't look like it's a real prime piece of land, I guess, because of all the wetlands, or the, not wetlands, there's another word for it, floodplain. There's a lot of floodplain around it. And so developing from the south doesn't look very likely anytime soon, that this, you know, that that street that's coming would have to come kind of from that southeast, and it's with that floodplain, if they put a street there, they couldn't build anything. It would just be like a street. So, you know, who's going to come in and buy that and pay for the street and the land, and 30,000 an acre or whatever. So there's some question about that. Even the property that is in question here has a small wetland on it, so they're aware of that. It's not part of the sale, but just to show that it's got some wet issues in that area. Let's see. Also, yeah, the civil engineer, he thought because there is no infrastructure coming right now or soon, that this would be a very viable option, because this project does not require sewer and water and just electricity. Also just wanted to remind everyone that this property was annexed to the city 20 years ago, at least. And the reason they annexed it is because there was a potential buyer that wanted to come in and develop. So the landowner went and annexed everything, and then they realized that they weren't going to get anywhere because the infrastructure wasn't there and it wasn't coming. And so that was a deal breaker. So they left. So they needed the infrastructure. So here we have a project that doesn't need all of that. Okay, it just needs electricity. Another example would just be like the fabrication business that came and asked Zumbrota if they could build. And there were sites that just didn't have the infrastructure, so they went back to Goodhue and built there. So basically, we feel that the city should make a decision on rezoning, whether it's industrial or a PUDC. Okay, whatever you want to do, that's your choice. But just want to move ahead with it. And
I thought at last meeting, the commission kind of gave the go-ahead to pursue the plan unit development commercial and work with engineers and staff on coming up with a more concrete plan. If there needs to be wetland delineation, I guess that's up to the engineers. But the only issue was whether there needs to be a platted street that wouldn't necessarily be open, but at least on paper exist.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question is, if that street ever gets opened or improved 10 years down the road, how are we going to pay for it? How would you pay for it?
Mm-hmm.
Some things I need filled in, being newer here. This is something me and Brian were talking about earlier. If she were to sell the land and a developer would come develop the land, we were talking that we would require the developer to pay for that portion of our future road. Is that conversation we had earlier? Is that correct?
Yeah, the city engineer is of the opinion that when a chunk of land within the city is developed, the developer puts the road in. You're right, it would be sitting out there all by itself. But if we don't do it, then who's going to do it? Later on.
We can talk about that.
But that can be
creative way to.
Yep.
If it can be delayed, is there a creative way to do it?
Right.
Ryan had sent out an email on having a letter of credit or something. I
Yep.
know there's cost to all of that, so.
And I think we just want you to be aware that you're going to be responsible for that road. That road is on both the MnDOT future road use map,
Okay.
not just our map. It's MnDOT that's saying, yep, this is a logical place for a road. And then it's also on concept plans, of course, for future commercial, because this is supposed to be commercial through there. You know, you made the case of doing a PUDC, which kind of overlays the zoning. You know, the commercial is still underlying, you know, for this. And the commission said, yep, you know, proceed that way and bring back a more detailed rendering of the project is what was said. We just had a concept map. And as far as I know, we still have just had that concept map.
Mhm.
Um,
I think that the buyer is interested in seeing that it can be rezoned before he would invest in spending thousands of dollars with an engineer just to get a few answers and still, you know, not have a definite.
Yeah,
You know.
well, it looks like.
Didn't we rezone that last meeting last month? I mean,
No.
No.
Were we just reading that or no? Is that something else? That the PUDC was,
It wasn't approved, it wasn't an agenda item.
It wasn't?
for approval, it was just simply for direction.
Yeah.
That's what Ryan had said, but actually what we wanted, what we intended was just to move ahead and get it rezoned. It's just not being said. So that's why I'm here and I'm officially
There needs
asking.
to be it's a process though. You need to
Right.
come up with definitely more concrete plans with a, you have to follow the ordinance for plan unit development.
So does the whole entire project have to be approved before it can be rezoned?
It's part and parcel of the project, yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, just so I'm under the correct terms, to rezone, you need a development application requesting the rezone first and foremost, and then, so, you know, supplemental material that goes along with that.
Have the ordinance in front of me, but just, you have to read through the plan unit development section.
Is there, this PUDC would be okay there too? Okay.
Laid out in the minutes that Ryan put together, commission suggested a PUDC, which requires platting of the land and construction of streets. The commission requested a more detailed rendering of the project. A concept map was provided. If the commission likes the concept, it would go to staff, and then staff would work with the landowner for requirements for platting. After that time, the preliminary plat would come back to the commission. The PUD would run concurrent with that process. It says no official application has been filed and the property owner is looking for direction. So the direction from the planning commission was to follow the process, you know, go ahead and follow the process. Had the planning commission said no right then, well then it would have been a no.
Right.
But the planning commission, in my mind, said that it looks like it may be viable, but you need to provide more detailed plans before a decision can be made.
Just to rezone it or a decision to go ahead with the whole project? I mean,
Well,
because like all these steps that you're talking about.
Is more than just a rezone from commercial to industrial. It involves more of a specific plan and platting and laying out of a street.
it's technically it would not be a rezone because we don't want the underlying commercial highway to go away because that's what the area needs to be. However, PUD, and like Matt talked about, the other PUD, that it's a way of helping or maybe facilitating something that could be a use within the commercial zoning. It's a way to kind of make some things work, basically.
Including messing around with setbacks or whatever the proposal is. If it looks okay, then it offers a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah, well, from here, why don't we do this? Why don't Dylan and I get together with Bill and we're going to give you a step-by-step process. This is what you need.
It's like you're asking me to develop it and talk to civil engineers and pay for all this. I'm just owning the land, but I'd like to sell it. I'd like to sell it to someone who would like to develop it, so then they can take over.
Yep, and that's a conversation
It
Dylan
just-
and I had to do. That's the normal process.
Okay, But me and the buyer don't feel comfortable selling land if he doesn't know how this is gonna go here with these boards and with all these other plans. It just seems like getting ahead of yourself. Okay, now and we don't want it platted if he's not gonna build it, if he's not gonna buy it. Once you plat it, it's in a different tax rate and everything. We don't wanna mess around with any of that if it's not for sure. So we don't understand why we can't rezone it. And just know that, okay, they're willing to work with us that far. Okay, it's going somewhere. I feel like the project's going somewhere. And I don't need to go to a civil engineer because it's not my project, It's not really my business to be doing that.
Sure. Yep. No,
So you're asking me to come back with things that,
Yeah, and we're asking for someone to come back with the information we need to make an informed decision. That's the right way to put it.
Well, the other issue then is that the city's not really providing, in the past and until now even, I'm not hearing that plan that they have with that road, that it's just definitely going to be here or which angle it's going to take. I mean, it's not, we don't know what to sell because it's like, where do we draw the line? And how do you survey this and cut it off if, the civil engineer, does he decide where the street's going to be? Or somebody else?
Well, the civil engineer would do a concept plan and basically the council would approve ultimately a plan. But, we've got concept plans. And again, it's all based on future and who knows what future is going to be and when future is going to be, but that's the way cities need to grow. Otherwise you end up with uses where they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And that's why we got to be careful in a situation like this when we're in a highway commercial and the use doesn't fit. And so trying to work with you to make that use fit so you can sell your land, but we can't do it without the engineering and the legwork to go along with it.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll talk to the potential buyers and see if they're willing to take that next step.
Sure, and if you want to bring them in here and we all meet with the city engineer as well, and then we can.
It would be nice if we could have a meeting so that
certainly
something feels like it.
Yep.
We can get it more done if we're all together and.
You bet. We just had that conversation the other day too, and we'll definitely put something together and bring you in. You can bring the owner or the owner. You are the owner. You can bring in the potential buyer as well, and we can talk through some of this stuff.
Okay.
With a staff meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
See, I just don't want them to feel discouraged that,
For sure.
This can't happen. It's just, you seem to want to do it all together, kind of like a lot more steps before we, make anything official.
Yeah, there's kind of steps to get there and it all kind of goes, it all goes hand in hand and it's, it's hard to make it convenient.
Right.
Because we gotta be careful with everything.
I'm sorry, I guess I just thought I had the impression that we just had to decide which way to zone it and then it could be decided, but a little more. Okay.
All right, we'll be in touch. We'll get a meeting together then.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Anybody has anything to say? Otherwise I can adjourn the meeting. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
We've been taking them out, but I don't know if it makes a difference. You were in all the